Captain Zara Velkan stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the enemy fleet grow bigger on her screens. The Vex ships looked like giant metal insects against the black space. Their hulls were dark and covered with sharp points that caught the light from the distant star. There were 12 of them. Zara only had 3 ships left. Her hands shook as she gripped the rail. The metal was cold under her fingers. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Their faces were pale and scared. Everyone knew they were going to die today. "Captain," said her weapons officer, a young man with green skin and 4 arms. His voice was quiet. "The civilians are still loading onto the transport ships. They need more time." Zara looked at the main screen. Far behind her small fleet, the big transport ships were taking on refugees from New Haven Colony, families with children, old people, thousands of them. They were all that was left of her world. "How long?" she asked. "1 hour, Captain. Maybe less if we're lucky." The Vex fleet was only 20 minutes away. Zara had sent out distress calls on every frequency she knew. She had begged for help from anyone who might be listening. The galaxy was a big place, but most of the other species were too far away, or too scared of the Vex to come. The Vex had been conquering worlds for 5 years now. They came without warning. They destroyed everything. No one could stop them. They had better weapons and more ships than anyone else. "Captain," her communications officer called out. She was a small woman with blue skin and large eyes. "I'm getting reports from the surface. The last evacuation shuttles are leaving the planet now." On the screen, Zara could see the brown and green planet of New Haven. It had been her home for 30 years. She had a house there with a garden. She grew flowers that smelled like honey. All of that would be ash soon. "Sir," the tactical officer said, "the Vex are moving into attack formation." Zara could see it happening. The enemy ships were spreading out in a pattern she knew well. They would hit her ships from 3 sides at once. It was smart. It would work. "Orders, Captain?" asked her first officer. He was an old man with gray fur and wise eyes. They had served together for 10 years. Zara took a deep breath. "We make them pay for every second. We buy the transports as much time as we can." Her crew nodded. They all knew what that meant. They were going to die fighting. "All ships," Zara said into her communicator. "This is Captain Velkan. We have one job. Keep the Vex busy until our people get away. We will not let them reach the transports." The other 2 ship captains responded right away. They were ready to die for their people. The first Vex ship fired. A bright green beam of energy shot across space and hit Zara's shields. The whole ship shook. Warning lights flashed red on every panel. "Shields at 70%, someone called out. More beams came. The 3 Catherian ships tried to fight back, but their weapons were old. The energy bolts that came from their guns were weak compared to what the Vex had. Zara's ship shook again. Harder this time. Sparks flew from a control panel near the back of the bridge. The lights flickered. "We've lost the port shield generator," the engineer reported. "I can't fix it from here." On the screen, Zara watched one of her other ships take a direct hit. Its hull cracked open like an egg. Air and fire rushed out into space. The ship went dark. "Captain," the communications officer said. Her voice was shaking. "The transport ships are asking for permission to jump to hyperspace." "Tell them to wait," Zara said. "The other transports aren't ready yet." Another hit. This time the lights went out completely for a few seconds. When they came back on, half the control panels were dead. "Hull breach on deck 5, someone called out. "Seal it," Zara ordered. The Vex ships kept coming. They moved like hunters who knew their prey was trapped. Slow and sure. They had all the time in the world. Zara's second ship exploded. She saw it on the screen. One moment it was there, firing its guns and trying to protect the transports. The next moment it was just pieces of metal floating in space. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "we should think about retreating." "No," Zara said. "Not yet," but she knew it was hopeless. Her ship was falling apart. The Vex had barely been scratched. In a few minutes she would be dead and the enemy would go after the transports. All those families. All those children, she had failed them. "Captain!" the communications officer shouted. "I'm getting something strange on the sensors." Zara looked at her screen. There were new readings at the edge of the system. "Something big was happening near the outer planets. What is it?" she asked. "I don't know, sir. The readings don't make sense. It's like something huge is tearing a hole in space itself." The Vex had stopped shooting. They were looking at the same readings. Their ships had turned toward the strange signals. On her screen, Zara could see ripples in space, like waves on water, but the water was reality itself. Something was coming through. Something massive, Captain, the tactical officer said. His voice was full of wonder. Whatever it is, it's bigger than anything I've ever seen. The space near the outer planets began to glow. Bright white light poured out of a crack in the darkness. The crack got bigger and bigger, and then something came through. It was a ship, but it was like no ship anyone had ever seen before. It was huge, bigger than the entire Vex fleet put together. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to bend light around it. Strange patterns covered its surface, patterns that hurt to look at directly. Dear gods, Zara whispered. The giant ship hung in space like a sleeping giant. For a moment, everything was quiet. Even the Vex had stopped moving. Then a voice came over the radio. It spoke in the old galactic language that everyone could understand. The voice was calm and cold. This is the United Human Stellar Navy vessel Indomitable Will. All hostile forces will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply. Zara's blood went cold. Humans. But that was impossible. The humans had disappeared 50 years ago. Everyone knew that. They had fought some terrible war and vanished from the galaxy. No one had seen them since. The Vex commander responded quickly. His voice was like grinding metal. Unknown vessel, you will not interfere. These worlds belong to the Vex now, the human voice came back. Still calm. Still cold. 20 seconds, one of the Vex ships fired at the human vessel. The green energy beam hit the strange hull and just stopped. It didn't even leave a mark. 10 seconds. The Vex commander sounded angry now. All ships open fire on the human vessel. Destroy it. All 12 Vex ships fired at once. Dozens of energy beams hit the human ship from every angle. The light was so bright that Zara had to look away. When the light faded, the human ship was still there. Not damaged at all. Time's up, the human voice said. What happened next? Zara would remember for the rest of her life. The human ship didn't fire weapons. It did something else. Something that made reality itself scream. 2 of the Vex ships just stopped existing. One moment they were there. The next moment there was just empty space where they had been. Not destroyed. Not blown up. Just gone. The other Vex ships tried to run, but space around them began to twist and bend. Some kind of field grabbed them and held them in place. This is Captain Velcon of the Catherian Defense Force, Zara said into her radio. Thank you for coming. We thought no one would help us. The human voice was quiet for a moment. Then it said, We always come when we can, Captain. But we're not the same humans you remember. The galaxy has changed, and so have we. The bridge of Zara's ship was quiet except for the sound of damaged systems trying to work. Her crew stared at their screens with wide eyes. The readings made no sense at all. Captain, her science officer said. She was shaking her head at her instruments. I'm getting energy readings that are impossible. The human ship is drawing power from somewhere that doesn't exist. Zara watched the giant vessel on her main screen. It was so big that her ship could fit inside its weapon ports. Strange lights moved along its hull in patterns that seemed to change when she wasn't looking directly at them. The Vex ships were still trapped in some kind of field. They couldn't move forward or back. Their engines fired uselessly against invisible chains. What's holding them? Zara asked. I don't know, her tactical officer replied. My sensors say there's nothing there. But the Vex ships are definitely stuck. The human ship began to move. It didn't accelerate like a normal vessel. One moment it was still. The next it was gliding toward the trapped Vex fleet. It moved like it was swimming through thick water instead of flying through space. Captain, the communications officer called out. I'm getting a signal from the human ship. They want to talk to you directly. Put them through. The main screen changed. Instead of showing space, it now showed the bridge of the human vessel. What Zara saw made her heart stop. The human bridge was vast and dark. Strange symbols floated in the air above control stations. The walls seemed to move and shift when she wasn't looking at them directly. And the crew, they looked human but wrong somehow. Their eyes were too bright. Their movements were too precise. They worked at stations that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Zara could see. In the center of it all stood a woman in a black uniform. She was tall and thin, with short gray hair and eyes like winter stars. When she looked at Zara through the screen, it felt like being examined by something vast and ancient. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Human Stellar Navy, the woman said. Her voice was steady, but there was something cold underneath it, something that had seen too much. "Are your people safe, Captain?" "Yes, Admiral. The transport ships got away during the battle." "Thank you for saving us." Admiral Chen nodded. "The Vex will not bother you again. We're going to make sure of that." Behind the Admiral, Zara could see the human crew working. They moved their hands over controls that weren't quite there, touching light instead of metal. One of them turned to speak to the Admiral, and Zara saw that half his face was covered with tiny metal plates that shifted and changed. "Admiral," Zara said carefully, "what happened to your people? Where have you been for 50 years? The Admiral's face became even colder. "We went to war, Captain, against things that make the Vex look like children playing with toys. We fought enemies that eat reality itself, and we became what we needed to become to win." On Zara's tactical display, something impossible happened. The human ship began to split apart, not breaking, dividing, like it was made of liquid metal instead of solid matter. The pieces rearranged themselves into new shapes, weapons that had no names, devices that bent space around them. "Dear gods," Zara whispered. "What are you?" "We're still human," Admiral Chen said. "But we're also something more now. We had to be. The things we fight. They're coming, Captain. They're always coming, and someone has to stand guard." One of the trapped Vex ships tried to fire its weapons. The energy beam left the ship normally, but then it just stopped. Hanging in space like a frozen lightning bolt, the human ship had somehow turned the weapon's own energy against itself. "How is that possible?" Zara's science officer asked. Admiral Chen looked directly at her. "Your science says energy can't be destroyed, only changed. We learned how to change it into whatever we need. Into shields, into weapons, into time itself." The frozen energy beam began to glow brighter. Then it reversed direction and shot back at the Vex ship that had fired it. The ship's own weapon tore through its hull like paper. "The Devourers taught us that reality is more flexible than most people think," the Admiral continued. "When you're fighting creatures that can eat stars and digest space itself, you learn to think differently about what's possible." Another Vex ship tried to escape. It fired its engines at full power and managed to break free from whatever was holding it. For a moment, Zara thought it might get away. Then space around the fleeing ship began to fold, like someone was crumpling up a piece of paper with the ship drawn on it. The vessel vanished into the fold. A second later, it reappeared right next to the human ship, exactly where the humans wanted it. "How long have you been fighting these Devourers?" Zara asked. 53 years, 4 months, 12 days, the Admiral said without hesitation. "We've lost 6 billion people. We've evacuated Earth twice. We've seen solar systems die and galaxies go dark. But we keep fighting." The human ship began to glow, not with normal light but with something deeper, something that made Zara's eyes water to look at it. "Why?" she asked. "Why keep fighting when the cost is so high?" Admiral Chen smiled, but it was the saddest thing Zara had ever seen. "Because if we don't, everything dies. Not just humans. Not just the galaxy, everything, everywhere. The Devourers don't just want to conquer. They want to unmake reality itself. Turn it all back into the nothing it came from." The glow around the human ship grew brighter. Zara's instruments started giving warnings about radiation levels, but it wasn't radiation like anything they knew. It was something that made matter itself remember what it was supposed to be. "We became monsters to fight monsters, Captain," the Admiral said. "We turned ourselves into weapons that could hurt things that shouldn't exist. We learned to break the rules of physics when the rules weren't enough." 3 more Vex ships tried to attack at once, their weapons fired in perfect coordination, targeting what they thought were weak points on the human vessel. The beams never reached their target. Instead, they curved around the human ship like water flowing around a stone. Then they began to orbit the vessel, moving faster and faster until they became rings of pure energy. "We don't just use technology anymore," Admiral Chen explained. "We became technology. We merged with it. Evolved with it. Changed ourselves until we could think at the speed of light and dream in quantum mechanics." The energy rings around the human ship suddenly expanded. They shot out in all directions, but somehow they only hit the Vex vessels. When the rings touched the enemy ships, they didn't explode. They just switched off. Like someone had found their power button and turned them off. All the remaining Vex ships went dark. "Dead in space. That's impossible," Zara's engineer said. "You can't just turn off a starship." "You can if you understand how energy and matter are really the same thing," the Admiral replied. "The Vex ships aren't destroyed. They're just paused. Their atoms are still there, but the forces holding them together have been asked politely to take a break. Zara stared at the dead Vex fleet. A few minutes ago, those ships had been about to kill her and everyone she cared about. Now they were floating junk. What happens now? She asked. Admiral Chen's expression became even more serious. Now you go home and rebuild. Live your lives, be happy. But remember that we're out here, fighting in the dark between the stars, making sure the light keeps burning. The human ship began to change again. The pieces that had separated earlier came back together, but in a different arrangement. It looked less like a weapon now and more like something else. Something that existed in more dimensions than Zara could see. Will we see you again? Zara asked. I hope not, the Admiral said. If you see us again, it means the Devourers have found you. It means the war has come to your part of space, and that would be very bad for everyone. The screen went dark. The human ship was already beginning to fade, like it was slipping between the cracks of reality. Admiral, Zara called out quickly. Thank you. The reply came through the radio, growing fainter with each word. We do what we must, Captain. Someone has to stand watch. Someone has to keep the nightmares away. And then they were gone. The giant ship, the impossible weapons, the people who had become more than human, all of it vanished as if it had never been there at all. Only the dead Vex ships remained, floating in the dark like monuments to the power of humanity's guardians. The silence after the human ship disappeared felt heavy and strange. Zara stood on her damaged bridge looking at the empty space where impossible things had just happened. Her crew was quiet, still trying to understand what they had seen. Captain, her communications officer said softly, I'm getting signals from the transport ships. They want to know if it's safe to come back. Tell them yes, Zara replied. The danger is over. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. The humans had saved them today, but Admiral Chen's words kept echoing in her mind. The Devourers are coming. The war has come to your part of space. Sir, her science officer called out, I'm still reading energy traces from where the human ship was. Whatever they used to get here, it left marks in space itself. Zara walked over to look at the readings. The numbers made no sense. According to the instruments, the human ship had torn a hole in the basic structure of reality. It had traveled through dimensions that didn't officially exist. How is any of this possible? She asked. Her science officer shook her head. I don't know. Our physics says most of what we just saw can't happen. But it did happen, which means our physics is wrong. On the main screen, the dead Vex ships floated like metal islands in the dark. Their hulls were intact, but there were no life signs from any of them. No power, no movement, nothing. Captain, her tactical officer said, should we board the Vex ships? Maybe we can learn something from their technology. No, Zara said quickly. Don't go near them. We don't know what the humans did to them. They might be dangerous. As she spoke, one of the Vex ships began to glow faintly. Not with the strange light the human ship had used, but with normal reactor fire. The ship was coming back to life. All ships, defensive positions, Zara ordered. The Vex might not be as dead as we thought. But when the enemy ship powered up its communication system, the voice that came through was not Vex. It was human. Cold and mechanical, but definitely human. This is a message for the Catherian forces, the voice said. The Vex crews have been placed in stasis. Their ships now serve as a warning to others who might threaten this system. Any hostile force that enters this space will be met with the full response of the United Human Stellar Navy. Zara realized what had happened. The humans hadn't destroyed the Vex ships. They had captured them, taken control of them, made them into guard dogs. The ships will remain in this system, the voice continued. They will protect you and your people. But remember, we are always watching. The war never ends. The Vex ship went dark again. But Zara knew it was still there, waiting, watching, ready to defend her people against anyone who might try to hurt them. Hours passed. Zara's ship limped back toward New Haven, followed by the transport vessels full of returning colonists. The planet looked the same as it always had, brown and green and peaceful under its yellow sun. But everything felt different now. They had met humanity's guardians. They had seen what people could become when they fought monsters for 50 years. They had been saved by beings who were still human, but also something more. Captain, her first officer said quietly, the crew is asking questions. They want to know what really happened out there. Zara thought about that. How could she explain what they had seen? How could she make anyone understand what the humans had become? Tell them the truth, she said finally. Tell them that humanity never abandoned the galaxy. They just went somewhere else to fight a war we can't imagine. They became something new so they could protect something old. And the Vex ships? They stay where they are. Consider them a gift from our guardians. 3 days later, Zara was in her office on New Haven's surface. She was writing her official report when her communication system chimed. Someone was calling her on a secure channel that didn't officially exist. The screen showed Admiral Chen. She looked tired, older than she had before. Behind her, Zara could see the bridge of the human ship, but it looked different now. Darker, more alien. Captain Velcon, the Admiral said, I wanted to check on your people. We're fine, Admiral. Thank you again for saving us. I'm glad to hear that. But there's something you need to know. The Vex attack on your system wasn't random. They were testing our response time, seeing how quickly we could get here. Zara felt cold. Testing for what? The Devourers are getting closer to this part of the galaxy. They're sending their servants ahead to scout for weaknesses. The Vex work for them now, whether they know it or not. On the screen behind Admiral Chen, Zara could see other humans working at their impossible stations. One of them turned to look at the camera, and Zara saw that his eyes were solid black, like they were filled with the space between stars. What does that mean for us? Zara asked. It means you need to be ready. The next attack won't be just Vex ships. It will be something worse, something that makes the Vex look harmless. Admiral Chen leaned forward. In the strange light of her bridge, her face looked more machine than human. We're going to leave you something, Captain. A gift, but it comes with a price. Or what kind of gift? Knowledge, technology, weapons that can hurt the things that are coming. But once you have them, there's no going back. You'll become part of the war whether you want to or not. Zara thought about her people, about the children in the schools and the families in their homes, about the flowers in her garden that smelled like honey. We'll take your gift, Admiral. We'll pay whatever price we have to. Admiral Chen smiled, but it was the same sad smile as before. I hoped you would say that, but I also hoped you wouldn't have to. The screen went dark. But that night, as Zara walked through the streets of New Haven's capital city, she saw shooting stars in the sky. Dozens of them, falling toward the planet's surface like metal rain. They weren't shooting stars. They were supply pods, full of weapons and technology that the humans had left behind. Tools for fighting monsters. Gifts from guardians who had paid the ultimate price to protect strangers. Zara stood in her garden, looking up at the falling lights. Her flowers swayed in the evening breeze, still smelling like honey. But she knew that smell might not last much longer. The war was coming to New Haven, and her people would have to become something more than they were if they wanted to survive it, just like the humans had. The next morning, Zara found the first supply pod in a field outside the city. It was the size of a small building made of metal that seemed to bend light around itself. When she touched it, words appeared in the air above it. Instructions written in a language she had never seen but somehow understood perfectly. Warning, the words said. This technology will change you. It will make you stronger, faster, smarter, but it will also make you less human. Use it only if you are willing to become what your enemies fear most. Zara looked at the pod for a long time. Then she called her government. Within hours, teams of scientists and engineers were on their way to examine the gift the humans had left. The war was coming. But New Haven would be ready, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, Admiral Chen and her impossible ship continued their endless fight against nightmares that wanted to eat reality itself. The Guardians watched over the galaxy, even when the galaxy didn't know they existed. 6 months had passed since the attack on New Haven. Zara's world had changed in ways she could never have imagined. The human technology pods had been opened, studied, and slowly integrated into their society. But the cost was becoming clear. The first volunteers to use the human weapons had changed. Dr. Marcus Webb, the colony's head scientist, now had silver threads running through his skin. They pulsed with soft light when he thought hard about something. His assistant, Linda Torres, could see in spectrums of light that didn't have names. Her eyes had turned completely white, but she could spot enemies from orbit. Zara herself had refused the enhancements at first, but as more reports came in from across the galaxy, she realized she didn't have a choice. The Vex weren't the real threat. They never had been. Captain, Dr. Webb said as he entered her office. His voice had a slight echo now, like he was speaking from inside a metal box. We finished analyzing the data from the latest raids. You need to see this. He placed a device on her desk. It projected a three-dimensional map of their sector of the galaxy. Red dots marked attacked systems. Green dots showed places that were still safe. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The red dots formed a perfect spiral moving inward toward the galactic core, toward Earth, toward humanity's home. They're not random attacks, Dr. Webb explained. Something is directing them, using the Vex and other species as scouts, testing our defenses. The Devourers, Zara said quietly. Yes, and according to the human data files, they're not far behind their advance forces. Maybe a year out. Maybe less. Zara studied the map. New Haven was right in the path of the spiral. Soon her people would face something far worse than the Vex. Show me what we're really up against, she said. Dr. Webb touched a control. The map changed, showing tactical data from human encounters with the Devourers. What Zara saw made her blood run cold. The enemy ships were massive, but they didn't look like ships at all. They looked like living things. Like whales made of darkness and hunger, they moved through space by eating it, leaving holes in reality behind them. They don't just destroy planets, Dr. Webb said. They unmake them, turn them back into the nothing they were before the universe began. Everything that was there, people, animals, plants, even the rocks and air, all of it just stops existing. How do you fight something like that? You become something that can hurt it, something that can touch the same level of reality it operates on. Dr. Webb held up his hand. The silver threads in his skin began to glow brighter. As Zara watched, his fingers started to become transparent. She could see through them to the wall behind. The human technology doesn't just give us better weapons, he explained. It changes what we are, makes us exist in more dimensions than just the three we're used to. When the Devourers try to unmake us, there are parts of us they can't reach. And the price. Dr. Webb's hand became solid again, but for a moment his face stayed partially transparent. We stop being entirely human. We become something new, something that can survive in a universe where the rules don't apply anymore. That evening, Zara called a meeting of all the colony leaders. They gathered in the main conference room. Mayors, scientists, military officers, and representatives from every major settlement on New Haven. She told them about the spiral of attacks, about the Devourers coming, about what they would have to become to survive. The human technology can save us, she said, but only if we're willing to change, to become part of their war. The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Mayor Sarah Jackson spoke up. She was an elderly woman who had helped found the colony 30 years ago. My granddaughter is 7 years old, she said. She draws pictures of flowers and dreams about becoming a teacher. If we do this, if we change ourselves, will she still be able to do those things? Dr. Webb answered gently. She'll still be herself. But she'll also be more. She'll be able to think faster, see farther, understand things that seem impossible now. She might still draw flowers, but they'll be flowers that exist in 4 dimensions instead of 3. And if we don't do this, then she won't exist at all. None of us will. The Devourers will erase us from history. The vote was unanimous. Every leader agreed to begin the transformation process for their people. They would become whatever they needed to become to protect their children's future. The changes started slowly. People who volunteered for the first treatments found that they could solve problems faster, see patterns they had missed before. Their bodies became stronger, their minds clearer. But other changes were harder to accept. Some people's skin became partially transparent. Others developed organs that existed in folded space, invisible but functional. A few began to phase in and out of normal reality, flickering like bad holographic projections. Zara herself finally submitted to the process on a Tuesday morning in what had once been the colony's main hospital. The procedure took place in a room filled with the strange, shifting technology that had come from the human pods. She lay on a table while machines that existed in more dimensions than she could see worked on her body. There was no pain, but she could feel herself changing. Her bones became denser but somehow lighter. Her nervous system gained new pathways that led to organs she didn't have names for. When it was over, she looked in a mirror and saw herself. But she also saw more than herself. She could perceive the quantum fluctuations in the air around her. She could feel the gravitational waves from distant stars. She could sense the edges of reality where it bordered on the void. How do you feel? Dr. Webb asked. His own transformation was nearly complete now. Half his body existed in normal space, half in folded dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Different, Zara said, but still me. Still human, but more than human. That night she walked through the streets of New Haven's capital. The city looked the same, but she could see so much more now. Energy patterns flowing between buildings, quantum threads connecting every living thing, the deep structure of space itself, humming with frequencies that had no names. Her people were changing too. Children played games that involved stepping through folded space. Adults worked at jobs that required them to think in 11 dimensions at once. Families gathered for dinner in houses that were bigger inside than outside. They were becoming something new, something that could stand against the void. 3 days later, the sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. Not Vex ships this time. Something else. Something that made the instruments scream warnings in languages that didn't exist. The Devourers had found them. Zara stood on the bridge of her ship, but it wasn't the same ship she had commanded before. The human technology had changed it too. Now it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, armed with weapons that could hurt reality itself. Around her, the crew worked at stations that existed partially in folded space. They moved with the precise efficiency of beings who had evolved beyond the limitations of three-dimensional thinking. "Contact Admiral Chen," Zara ordered. "Tell her the test has begun." The response came almost immediately, not through radio or any conventional means, but through the quantum entanglement channels the humans used for instantaneous communication across vast distances. "We're here, Captain," Admiral Chen's voice said, speaking directly into Zara's enhanced mind. "We've been waiting. Are your people ready?" Zara looked around her bridge, at her crew, who had become something more than human to face an inhuman threat, at the readings showing enemy forces that existed partially outside reality itself. "We're ready, Admiral. We're not the same people you saved 6 months ago." "Good," Admiral Chen replied, "because what's coming next will test everything we've all become. The real war starts now." On the main screen, Zara could see shapes moving in the dark between the stars, shapes that consumed light and devoured space itself. The Devourers had arrived, but New Haven was no longer defenseless. Its people had paid the price to become guardians themselves. They had given up their pure humanity to gain the power to protect everything they loved. The battle for reality itself was about to begin. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights, but time itself became strange during the fighting, so it might have been 3 minutes or 3 years. Reality bent and twisted as forces that should not exist fought for the right to exist at all. Zara stood on her bridge, commanding her transformed ship against enemies that ate light itself. Around her, the crew worked with minds that could think in 11 dimensions at once. Their enhanced bodies moved with precision no baseline human could achieve. The Devourers came in waves. Not ships, but living pieces of the void between universes. They looked like whales made of darkness swimming through space as if it were water. Where they passed, stars went out. Planets stopped existing. Even the memory of what had been there vanished. But the people of New Haven fought back with weapons that the humans had taught them to build. Weapons that fired bullets made of crystallized time. Energy beams that convinced matter to stop obeying physics. Missiles that exploded in dimensions the Devourers couldn't see. "Target the big one," Zara ordered, pointing at a Devourer that was the size of a small moon. "All ships concentrate fire on the void whale approaching Sector 7. Her weapons officer was Dr. Webb's assistant, Linda Torres. Half her body now existed in folded space, making her look like a person-shaped hole in reality. But she could see the Devourer's weak points across multiple dimensions. "Firing quantum disruptors," Linda reported. "Impact in 17 seconds across 4-dimensional planes." The weapons hit their target. The Devourer shuddered, its dark hide rippling like water. For a moment it looked solid, real. Then it began to unravel, its substance returning to the void it had come from. "One down," Zara said. 63 to go. The battle was going better than she had dared to hope. The human technology worked. Her people had changed enough to fight monsters that existed outside normal reality, but she knew this was just the beginning. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "Admiral Chen is requesting a direct link." The main screen changed to show the bridge of the human ship. Admiral Chen looked older than before, more worn down by the endless war. Behind her, the human crew worked at stations that seemed to exist in a completely different universe from the one Zara was in. "You're doing well, Captain," the Admiral said. "Better than most worlds do in their first real battle." Your people adapted quickly. We had good teachers, Zara replied. But this can't be all of them. There have to be more devourers coming. Admiral Chen's expression became grim. Many more. This is just a scouting force. The real army is still 6 months out. Maybe a year if we're lucky. On Zara's tactical display, she could see the battle continuing around New Haven. Her transformed ships were holding their own against the void creatures, but barely. Every few minutes, another devourer would manage to unmake one of her vessels, erasing it and its crew from existence. Admiral, we need more help. More ships. More weapons. I can't give you what I don't have, Admiral Chen said sadly. We're fighting on 100 fronts across the galaxy. Every world we've helped is under attack. Every system we've visited is being tested. Zara felt cold despite the heat from her ship's damaged systems. Are we losing? We're holding the line, barely, but it's not enough to just hold. We need to push them back. We need to take the fight to them. How? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. There's a way, but it requires a sacrifice that no one should have to make. What kind of sacrifice? The kind that saves the galaxy but costs everything we are. The kind that protects the future but destroys the present. Another devourer broke through the defensive line. This one was smaller but faster, diving toward New Haven's surface like a living black hole. Zara's ground-based weapons fired at it, but their shots passed right through its shifting form. All ships, intercept that devourer before it reaches the planet, Zara ordered. 3 of her vessels moved to block the creature's path. They fired everything they had: quantum torpedoes, reality bombs, weapons that turned physics inside out. The devourer slowed but didn't stop. Then something impossible happened. The human ship, the massive indomitable will, simply appeared between the devourer and New Haven. Not flew there. Not jumped through hyperspace. Just existed in one place and then existed in another. The void creature slammed into the human vessel like a wave hitting a mountain. For a moment, both ships were hidden in an explosion of dark energy that made space itself scream. When the light faded, the devourer was gone, but the human ship looked different, smaller. Parts of it had been erased, just like the planets the devourers attacked. Admiral, Zara called out. Are you all right? Admiral Chen's image flickered on the screen. Half her face was missing, as if someone had carefully erased part of her from reality. But she was still standing, still commanding her ship. We're fine, Captain. The ship can regenerate what was lost. It just takes time. How? We learned how to exist in multiple states at once. Parts of us stay safely hidden in folded dimensions while other parts fight. If the fighting parts get destroyed, the hidden parts can rebuild them. As Zara watched, Admiral Chen's missing face slowly grew back, like watching a person-shaped hole get filled in by invisible hands. The cost of fighting monsters, the Admiral explained. We had to become monsters ourselves. Not evil monsters, necessary monsters, guardians who can touch the void without being consumed by it. The battle was winding down. Most of the devourers had been destroyed or driven off. But Zara knew this was just the first test. The real army was still coming. Admiral, you mentioned a way to push them back. What did you mean? Admiral Chen's expression became even more serious. We go to their home, the void between universes where they come from. We take the fight to them directly. Is that possible? Yes, but it means leaving this universe behind, permanently. Everyone who goes will never be able to come home. They'll exist forever in the space between realities, fighting to keep the devourers from breaking through. Zara understood now. The ultimate sacrifice. To save the galaxy, someone would have to give up being part of it. How many ships would you need? All of them. Every enhanced vessel, every transformed crew. It's the only way to make sure they can't follow us back. The main screen went dark as the Admiral ended the connection. But a few minutes later, a new signal came through. Not from the human ship, but from across the galaxy. Messages from every world that had been changed by human technology. From every species that had paid the price to fight the void. They had all come to the same conclusion. The only way to save the galaxy was to leave it. One by one, the enhanced fleets began to gather at rally points near the galactic edge. Ships from 1,000 worlds, crewed by beings who were no longer entirely what they had been, all heading toward the void between universes. Zara looked around her bridge one last time. At her crew, who had given up their pure humanity to become something that could protect their families. at the stars outside which her children would never see again after today. Set course for the rally point, she ordered. All ships prepare for the final jump. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency. They all understood what they were doing. They were becoming legends. Guardians who would fight forever in the dark between universes so that the light could continue to shine in the universe they left behind. As her ship accelerated toward the edge of known space, Zara thought about her garden on New Haven, about the flowers that smelled like honey, about the children who would grow up safe because of what she and her people were about to do. The last message from Admiral Chen came through just as they reached the jump point. Thank you, Captain. All of you. The galaxy will remember what you sacrificed, and somewhere in the void we'll keep fighting, forever if that's what it takes. Zara's ship jumped into hyperspace, followed by thousands of others. Behind them, the galaxy continued to turn, safe, protected, defended by guardians who had paid the ultimate price. Not their lives, but their right to live in the universe they had saved. In the void between realities, the war continued. And it always would. But the galaxy was free. And somewhere in a garden on New Haven, flowers that smelled like honey bloomed in the spring sunshine, never knowing about the monsters that could no longer reach them.